All right, so today we're going to look at some factoring, other factoring methods. It's called factor by grouping because sometimes we need to, well, in order to graph, we have to have it factored. And so we have to know how to factor by grouping. All right, so we're going to factor. Okay, so number one, this one's already partially factored. So I want to show you kind of what it's gonna look like after we do the first step. But let's go ahead and see if we can factor this. So x times x plus 3 plus 7 times x plus 3. Okay, we want to factor. Okay, so, well, before I even say anything, does anyone have an idea of how we're going to factor this? Kurt?
You're going to take out x plus 3.
There you go. This is a GCF. We have two terms. Terms are separated by plus and minus. We have this term over here, and we've got this term over there. If there's something common, we take it out. So x plus 3 is a GCF. So we'll take that out. Okay, excellent. So x plus 3 is what we take out. Okay, and we know how to take that out. Now we put back in what we took out. So what do we have left for this? X, right, for this term. So x, and then plus, what about this one? 7. And that's it. It's just GCF. Take out greatest common factor of x plus 3, and we put back. So it's factored. And then we'd easily be able to sketch that, I'm sure, right? It's a parabola, actually. It crosses there, the negative 7 and 3. Okay, we won't graph that one. Okay, number 2, x squared times x minus 5 minus 16 times x minus 5. And the same idea, we're going to factor. All right, so what's our GCF out of the two terms? X minus 5 is common to both. So we take out an x minus 5. So x minus 5 makes you put it in parentheses. Okay, and then what do we have left? X squared minus 16. Good. Okay, well, are we done factoring? No. There's a what? Difference of two perfect squares. Okay, so we'll just tag this x minus 5 along. Okay, and this factors to, how does that factor? There we go, x, however you want to do, plus 4, x minus 4. And that is completely factored. There we go. Okay, and I'm sure we'd be able to graph that if we had to. Okay, so leading up to, so number 3. So if we have 20 minus 16x minus 5x squared plus 4x cubed. Okay, and we want to factor this. And eventually we want to be able to graph it, so we have to know how to factor it. There's a lot of things here. We got x cubed all the way to a number. Okay, if you have 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you recognize 2 of the terms have a GCF and the other 2 have a GCF, then we want to possibly, more than likely, factor by grouping. Okay, we're going to group these 2 and these 2. So I call it a 2 in 2 factoring. 2 things and 2 things. But you're going to factor by grouping these 2 and these 2. All right, so this is how we do it. Out of the first 2, what's a common or GCF? 4. Okay. And that leaves us with what? 5. Good. Minus 4x. Good. So that's a simple, hey, let's take out a GCF out of that. Okay, now that's 2. The other 2, looks like we have GCF, common factors. What's common? An x squared, okay? And I can take out an x squared or I can take out a negative x squared. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take out a negative x squared. You'll see why in just a second. And so I'll put negative x squared. And so that's the negative and minus, same thing. Same thing. If we took out a positive x squared, you have to put a plus there. Right? You can't just, if we took out a positive x squared, you can't just put x squared, because that'll look like multiplication, wouldn't it? Okay, so you have to, it's got to be plus or minus right there. All right, so we take out a negative x squared, which yes, it is minus. We take out a negative x squared. So what do we have left out of that? 5. Is it positive 5 or negative 5? Positive 5, because if we distribute that, it gives us negative 5x squared. There you go. And then a minus 4x, because that'll give us a positive 4x cubed, right? And let me undo that. Okay, so are we done factoring? Or can we go further? We can go further. In fact, we're not even factored because these aren't factored. That's a minus there. Okay, what can we take out? There we go, GCF, just like our other ones. Okay, so 5 minus 4x is our GCF. So 5 minus 4x times, what do we have left? 4 minus x squared. Good. So it's factored, but is it factored completely? No. Looks like we can factor that. Difference of two squares. So let's do that. So 5 minus 4x times what? Okay, because I heard this is very common. Oh, hey, we could just go x minus 2, x plus 2. Can't we? No, that's backwards, right? So no, we need to do this. So what times what is 4? 2 times 2, right? And then what times what is x squared? Well, x times x. So we could do 2 minus x, 2 plus x, and there we go. Okay, now that's factored completely. Okay. Okay. Okay, number 4. So this is factor by grouping. All right, before I do the next one, number 5, I want to show you something that it came up earlier in a homework, I think last Friday or whenever, going over it. If you have 7 minus x, 7 minus x, and sometimes we want to switch that around and we wish it was x minus 7. And so is there a way we can actually switch it without changing it? I mean, we can't just say, hey, this is just x minus 7 because it's subtraction, right? 2 minus 5, which is what? 2 minus 5. And then is that the same as 5 minus 2? No, it's different, right? So, but, right. So we want to be able to just switch this, but we can't just switch it. We have to do something else to counter that switch. So if you do want to switch it around and call this, leave a little space right here, and call that x minus 7, because that's, a lot of times we want it like that. Well, it's real easy. How do you do it? If you make one switch, you pull out one negative. So just put a negative right there. So go ahead and switch it, but then pull out a negative to counter that. Okay. Now, are these equal? Well, how do we know? Well, because I told you true. We could make up a number for x? Absolutely. Absolutely. Could we also distribute this and check? So what do we get when we distribute this negative 1? Negative x. Hey, there it is. There's our negative x. What? Plus 7. Hey, there's our positive 7. So it's the same. So if you want to switch it, you could switch it, but pull out one negative. Okay, that's if it's subtraction there. All right. Incidentally, if you had x plus 5, can I switch this without doing anything? Can I call that 5 plus x? Is this true? Yes. If it's plus, you could switch it. 5 plus 2, 2 plus 5, it's the same. Just when you have subtraction, you gotta. Okay, so number 5. Let's say we have 7x times x minus 3 minus 3 minus x. And again, we're factoring. Okay. Is there a GCF out of these two terms? Kind of, right? This one's kind of like that one. Can we make it the same? Can we make this, because that's x minus 3. Can we make this one x minus 3? Sure, because we just learned how. So I can switch that around and call that x minus 3, but if I switch it around, what do I have to do? Pull out a negative. Okay, so 7x times x minus 3. Let me just put this minus there. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull out a negative. So that's pull out a negative, and you're left with x minus 3. So I switched it. But I pulled out a negative. There we go. What's minus negative now? Plus. Let's just go and make that a plus. There you go. Okay. So we're still not done, but we switched it. Boom. And we took out a negative. That made it a plus. Okay, now there's a GCF. GCF is x minus 3. So let's take that out. X minus 3. Okay, and we're left with 7x. And is that it? Well, we got, if I just left it like that, that's not the same as that. Put a 1 there if it makes it better. So 7x plus 1. There you go. Now it's factored. Okay, how can you check? This x minus 3 times the 7x, there it is, plus this x minus 3 times the 1. If you distribute it, there it is. Okay, it's factored. All right. Number 6. So factor by grouping. Number 6. How about we do this? 8x minus 8 plus x cubed minus x to the 4th. All right, so it looks like we can factor by grouping, because they kind of separate themselves, 2 and 2. All right, so what can we take out of the first 2? 8. Okay, that leaves us with just x minus 1. Okay. Then what can we do?
Factor by x to the 3rd.
Take out an x cubed. Okay. So I just put x cubed. No. Don't just put x cubed there. What do we have to? Is that a positive x cubed? So you better put a plus. You have to have either a plus or a minus there. And it's a positive. Okay. And then what do we have left?
X.
What do we have left? Well, to get the x cubed, you get 1 minus x. Okay, let's double check here. I think we're going to, if I distribute this, what do we get? X cubed times 1. So x cubed minus x to the 4th. There we go. All right. So what next? We have to switch. Okay, and eventually you're going to get a little bit better and say, hey, wait a second. I could take out a negative x cubed and we can avoid this step, but that's okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and switch that and pull out a negative. Okay, so we have 8 times x minus 1. Okay, let's pull out a negative. So I'm going to make that instead of a plus. Let's call that negative x cubed times, and now I switch it, x minus 1. Okay, so I switch it, and I pull out a negative. And there it is. Okay, I switch it, pull out a negative. Negative 1 times x cubed is negative x cubed. Okay? So now let's continue factoring. This is pretty tough factoring. It's pretty advanced here, but I think, are we following though? Okay. So now GCF. This is factor by grouping. Got our GCF. So we can take out a what? Good, x minus 1. Okay, what does that leave us with? A minus x cubed. Nice. Are lights flashing? Ding, ding, ding. What? Can we still factor? Sure. What type of factoring is this? You wash your hands with it. Hopefully you use. So okay. So factoring, difference of two cubes. Okay, so x minus 1 times, do we remember how to soap factor? What? So cube root of that. Cube. What, did you say 2? Okay. 2 cube root of 8 minus x times 4, this squared, same opposite, always positive, plus this times this, 2 times x, always positive, x squared. There we go. There we go. And it's factored. It's factored. Okay, I got 2 more here. 2 more. Okay, so stepping up the difficulty a little bit. Okay, number 7, 5x cubed minus 5x squared y plus 15x squared minus 15x xy. Okay. All right, so we got to factor this thing. So before you, well, what do we do? What would you do to factor this? Absolutely. Anytime you hear the word factor, GCF. If you've got a GCF of all the terms, all 4 terms, you should take it out because you're more likely going to make a mistake and not. Real quick, like this, was there a GCF to all of them? No, the 20 did not have an X, right? So yes, they all have a GCF. What is our greatest common factor to all 4 of these? 5 and an X. Don't all have Y's. Okay, there we go. So 5x, I agree. GCF. What do we have left? X squared minus 1xy plus 3x minus 3. It already has an x, so 3y. There we go. So we took a GCF out. Okay, so now what about all this leftover stuff? How do we factor this? Can we factor by grouping 2 and 2? Do these 2 have something in common? Yes. And do these 2 have something in common? Yes. 2 and 2. Okay, so we have 5x, which is going to tag along there, times, I'm going to put it in parentheses like this because I know I'm going to use other parentheses. Okay, let's 2 and 2 factor this thing. Okay, so what can I take out of the first 2? An x, and that leaves minus y. Good. So far, so good. What can I take out of the other 2? Negative 3 or positive 3? Well, you can cut. I'd say positive 3. Okay, so should I just put 3? 3 plus 3. We'll take out a positive 3. Good. Good. Okay, and what does that leave us with? X minus, well, we're taking out a 3. So x minus y. And good, it matches. Okay, and if we we can take out a negative 3, but now to be switched, we'd have to switch it back. So yeah, taking out a positive 3 worked for us. Okay, now let's continue this GCF right there, right? Okay, so 5x times, what's our GCF? Between these, x minus y. So x minus y times x for that plus 3 for that. Okay, and I guess we don't need these other parentheses there. Okay, but that's it. It's factored. It's factored. Okay, you don't have to rewrite it, but I will, just because. So same thing. I just didn't put the parentheses there. Okay, so it's factored. Okay, last one. This is actually number 20. Actually, if you do this on your packet, so get your homework out to save us transferring it over. Okay, it's actually the last problem there. Might have to write a little small, but this is number 20 on the homework. So we'll do this one. All right, so we want to eventually graph it and then label the x and y intercepts. So let's see. So they want f of x minus g of x. Okay, so y is equal to, here's f of x, so 4x to the fourth plus 8x cubed, there's f of x, minus g of x. So minus g of x, what do I have to remember to do? Put a parentheses. So minus this whole g of x. So 16x squared plus 32x. Okay, there's f of x, and then there's minus, and there's g of x. Now we can distribute the negative. Okay, we want to eventually graph this thing. So 4x to the fourth plus 8x cubed minus 16x squared minus 32x. Okay? Well, we want to graph it. I guess we know some things. I know it's at fourth degree. It's probably going to be up and up, but I don't know where the x-intercepts are. So what do we need to do? We need a factor. So yes, definitely GCF. What can we take out? A 4, yes, a 4, and they all have an x. Okay, what do we have left? X cubed plus 2x squared x minus 8. I agree. Okay, well, let's keep on factoring. Y is equal to 4x. Okay, I'm going to put that times. Okay, we've got to factor the rest there. Let's factor by grouping. First 2, second 2. Okay, what can we take out of the first 2? X squared times what? X for the x cubed plus 2. Good, that's the first 2. Factor out an x squared. Factor out an x squared, right? Okay, what about these other 2? What do you want to factor out? We can factor out a 4. Well, let's factor out a negative 4. So I'll put minus 4. Okay, what do we have left after we take that out? X plus 2. That's negative 4x minus 8. Got it. Okay, we'll keep on going here because we almost have it factored. So 4x there. What can we take out of these 2 terms? X plus 2. So x plus 2 in parentheses. What's left? Good. X squared minus 4. But wait, yes, we can still factor this thing. This problem keeps on going, doesn't stop. So y is equal to 4x times x plus 2. Just recopy that. There you go. This is the difference of two squares. X plus 2 times x minus 2. Nice. Leave it like that? No. What do we do? There you go. There's 2 of those. Nice. So I'm going to put that together. Let's call that squared. The x plus 2 squared. All right, so y equals 4x times x plus 2, but they're squared, so we know it bounces, right, at -2. And then x minus 2. Let's copy that. Okay, this is completely factored. It's a lot, but this thing right there is in a factored form where we can now sketch it. Okay, so where are the zeros? X-intercepts. -2 and +2. Now, is that it? And 0 right there. Right? Because that's a variable. Okay, that's the same as 4 times x minus 0 times x plus 2 squared times x minus 2. Right? So 0 is a root. 0 is a root. Okay, right there. Okay, how do we, what's the degree? I forgot. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4. So there, where do we start? Up. Okay, so we start up. Okay, what do we do at -2? Bounce, because it's squared. -2 comes from an even. So bounce. What do we do at 0? First. So go through. What do you do at 2? Through, because it's to the first. Odd power crosses, right? And lo and behold, it should go up and up. Okay? So that's as tough as it gets right there. If you can do that, you can get them all. Okay, so factor by grouping. Okay, look at your notes if you forgot how to, but it's all practice on factor by grouping, right? If you need to switch something around, switch it around. Okay, that's a wrap. Okay. Yep, so 1 through 19 is basically your homework.